Purāṇānaṁ Ālayam Karuṇālayam Namāmi Bhagavatpādam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Namah Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnanaikamurtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Ashabdamasasparsham
अशब्दमस्पर्शम्
Arupamavyayam
अरूपमव्ययम्
Tathar Rasam Nityam
तथा रसं नित्यम्
Agandhavachayat
असन्तवच्छयत्
अगन्धवच्छयत्
Anadyanantam Mahatah Param
अनाद्यनन्तं
महतः
महतः
परम्
परम्
Dhruvam
ध्रुवम्
Nichayatan Mrityumukhat Pramuchyate.
ध्रुवम्
जायतन् मृत्युमुखात् प्रमुच्यते।
प्रमुच्यते।
In describing Brahman, Atma, I, since there are no characteristics, no guna, no qualities, we have to use negation only. And you will see all of these are words used to describe Brahman, I, or only to say one that does not have this. In that you can see that there are two sets of qualities that talks about. Agandham, Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam, Arasam, and Agandhavat. Relating to the five senses. Saying that I am not accessible to any of the five senses. And in introducing this mantra, Bhashyakara took these five words first. That which is not Shabdavat, which is not Sparshavat, not Rupamat, not Rasavat, and not Gandhavat. And therefore, it is not available for the Indriyas. Indriya Atitaha, that's the meaning of the word, Indriya Atitaha. And Bhashyakara used this very beautifully in the introduction to this mantra to make us think about why it is so difficult to understand. Why is he compared it to walking on razor's edge? Because even among these elements which have these properties, you can see the taratamyam, the gradation. And the more subtle, more pervasive have less qualities. So if you go from Prithvi upwards, if you want, Prithvi, Apaha, Agni, Vayu, and Akasha. The number of available characteristics or qualities or attributes which can be used to identify each of these is less and less and less. And therefore, each one, step by step, is more subtle, more sukshma, more pervasive, can be seen as the Atma of the one before. He is the Karanam for that. Till we come to the state of Akasha, which has only one attribute. So he took these five very nicely and said, that which you're looking for has not even that one attribute. Therefore, not available for any of the Indriyas. So it is really a jump from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and not 0. As non-availability of this for any sense. He uses the word kimu, what to talk of, that I, Brahman, when even within these you can see the gradation and more what you might call Sukshmataram. What to talk of this, which has no qualities at all. So he uses the word Sukshmatvadi Niratishayatvam. The quality of, if you can use the word quality, highest possible, extreme, where there's nothing beyond, is the nature of I, Atma, Brahman. So when you look at these words, these five already Bhashyakara has used to bring us into this mantra. And then there are some more words. What are those words? Avyayam. Then Nityam. Anadi. Anantam. Mahatav Param. Dhruvam. These 6 words also describe the same Brahman. That is not available for description by words. Yato vacho nivartante. Words try to reach that far, cannot reach. Words cannot be used to describe this. Yato vacho nivartante. Aprapya nivartante. Come back without being able to describe this vastu. Atma, Brahman, I. And yet you have to use words, there's no choice. And here is where Bhashyakara takes this 5 to use to show how it is the Sukshmatamam. Therefore, most difficult to understand. It is not an object. It is I, Aham. And that I is nothing to do with the I that I thought I was. It is Chaitanya Swarupam only. And the English word that's used often for this is consciousness. There also we have seen how we have to be very careful in the way we use the word consciousness. Because all these words, whether you talk of any word to describe Brahman, there are two things, very beautiful. All of them have a certain Laukika meaning. Now, you're talking about something which words cannot reach. Therefore, obviously, the Laukika meaning cannot apply there. If you combine these two sentences saying that these are words which have a certain common understanding among people. And yet we're saying that I, Atma, Brahman is not available for words. So clearly the padam and its artha, which is what we commonly use to describe any object, padartha, cannot be applied here. So we have to understand these words for what they mean, because we have no choice but to use words. So we are extremely grateful to Bhashyakara because he picks up these words and shows us how to understand these words. So even after having used the 5 words in the introduction to this mantra and shown us what they mean, how they should be used, they are the easiest. 5 senses, the object of 5 senses is not an object of senses. Therefore, none of these senses will work. Right? When you go to the next chapter, starts with that. We have been put in the very unfortunate position that these senses look outward. Paranchikani. And because they look outwards, they look for objects. Anatma, non-I. And in that way, Paramatma, the Creator, who has given these senses to us, has made it very easy to understand objects of the world, but extremely difficult to understand I, Atma, Brahman, because these senses cannot look inward. Symbolic. Atma is everywhere. You don't have to look inward for the Atma. The reason they say is because I have a sense of I which is contained by the Sharira. Therefore, I look at inward and outward. So Bhashyakara takes these 5 words to represent the 5 senses and uses them to tell us how difficult it is. Then uses the next set of words to understand the nature of I, Brahman, a little bit more clearly. So he starts this Bhashyam. Ashabdam,
Ashabdam,
Asparsham,
Asparsham,
Arupam,
Arupam,
Arasam,
Tarasam,
Agandhavaccha.
Nityamavaccha.
So these 5 is clubbed together, although it is not in the same order in the mantra itself. Agandham, Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam, Arasam, Agandhavat. Shabdam na vidyate yasya is not available. Rupam na vidyate yasya. Each one of them. Yat etad, Yat etad
Yat etat
Vyakhyatam
Vyakyatam
Brahma Avyayam.
Brahma Avyayam.
These words have already been used and discussed. Vyakhyatam. He's done that in the introduction to this mantra. These yat etat, these words, Vyakhyatam have been already discussed to show Brahman. That Brahman which is avyayam. So Bhashyakara takes up this word avyayam, nityam and other words and expands on them. What does it say? Yadhi
Yadhi
Shabdadimat
Shabdhadimat
Tadvyeti
Tadavyeti
Yadhi becomes Yadhi. Yadhi, that which is Shabdadimat, has these qualities, Shabda Adi. Tadvyeti, it declines, it decays. Vyaya. Why does it say that? Because anything which has a characteristic, a quality is subject to change. That's how the world is. Any characteristics, any quality is subject to change. What our senses were in the 20s show change by the time one is 60. You know how this whole thing goes, no? Apakshayam. That which reduces. We know. Gradually, one day, we realize that I'm not able to see very well. So you go to the doctor and get glasses. Enhance the power to see. Now you're looking at our own group. Almost all of us have glasses. Correct? It's chaya. Anything which has any property. Slowly you find that every time somebody talks to you, say, what? What did you say? Please repeat yourself. Chaya. So, whenever it is Shabdavat, if you say Shabdhadimat, that which is any characters like a Shabda, Sparsha, etc., is Tad Vyeti, declines. And that is what we've always known. It is one of the biggest of the 6 changes, Shadvikara, Asti, Bhati, Vardate, Viparnamate, Apakshiyate. Till finally all of them go. That's the end of that. So any characteristic, any type will always change, subject to change. So tad vyeti, tad kshiyate, declines. Now he says idam tu
Idam tu
ashabdadimatvat
Ashabdadimatvad
avyayam
Avyayam
na vyeti
Navyeti
na kshiyate.
Nakshiyate.
Taken up the word avyayam. Avyayam, anybody who studied anything to do with grammar, Sanskritam grammar, has heard the word avyayam. Indeclinable. Normally words are used, Sanskrit is it's almost a perfect language, Sanskritam bhasha. Every word is formed based on whether it's a verb or a noun. If it's a verb, it changes depending upon whether referring to Prathama Purusha, Madhyama Purusha, or Uttama Purusha, whether Ekavachanam, Bahuvachanam, or Dvivachanam, whether Pullinga or Strilinga, whether it has other definition, which group, Gana does it belong to, therefore what change it undergoes. All the rules are there. And if it's a noun, we say it declines. Ramaha, Ramam, Ramena, Ramaya, Ramat, Ramasya, Rame, it declines. Meaning it attaches some other pratyaya to it to change the word form, to represent what is happening to that action, not that verb, that noun. Very beautiful. This thing I learned in class 6. Class 6 must have been, I must have been what, 11 years old? That means a good 65 years, 66 years ago. I have remembered even today. Prathama ne, Dvitiya ko, Tritiya se, Chaturthi ke liye, Panchami se, Shashti ka ke ki, Saptami se. How it changes, declines. The word undergoes changes to reflect what you want to say. But some words don't decline. Cha, Ataha, they don't decline. They are avyaya. I don't know why in English they use the word decline. Decline means that it's going down. But literally it is not actually, it's only in serial form it going down. Prathama, Dvitiya, Tritiya, etc. But it is called decline. It is vyeti. So Panini Maharishi has given it a name, avyaya. It is not always, and avyaya has a meaning, but some of Panini's language, when he gives a name, doesn't necessarily have a meaning in the general language. He has used several words to represent a certain activity, a certain group. Bha-sanya. So sanya means words. What is bha-sanya? It doesn't have a meaning otherwise, but he defines it. What is bha? But avyaya is taken, it has a meaning, there's a word. He uses guna, vriddhi. Vriddhi has a meaning, guna has a meaning. May not necessarily directly fit guna. Some characteristics it adapts. Vriddhi, it grows, becomes bigger. I, au, vriddhi, vriddhi letters. So Pani Maharshi uses the word avyaya. Words that do not undergo any change. Words that don't decline. Avyaya, Bhashyakara explains. Yadhi shabdhadimat tat vyeti. Anything which has these attributes will decline. Hearing will decline, sight will decline, everything will decline. He's shown already in the introduction to this mantra that Brahman, I always keep adding this I so that it starts sticking in our heads. Brahman, Atma, I, all the same thing. is not, it is ashabdam, asparsham, arupam. Doesn't have any of these. Therefore, is idam tu
idam tu
ashabdimatvat,
ashabdimatvat
adimatvat, ashabdadimatvat, everything. Starting from shabda, shabda, asparsha, etc. Ashabdadimatvat,
ashabdimatvat
avyayam.
avyayam
Vyayam, it is because it is not got any of these attributes, it is avyayam. Not subject to decline, not subject na ksharati, kshiyate. Naraha is also saying, nara na riyate ti naraha. So, ashabdadimatvad, being ashabdadi, etc. Relate to what the mantra says. Being ashabdadi, etc. Na vyeti is avyayam, does not decline. And to that, he explains, what is avyayam? Na vyeti. Na vyeti. And he makes it even clearer. Na kshiyate. It does not decline. There is no possibility. So I never decline. I, when understood correctly, cannot make a statement that I am becoming less. I try to make a distinction saying, I am becoming less is correct in the form, in the sense that my eyes becoming less, my ears, hearing becoming less, but I is never changes. But the easiness doesn't change. So he says, na vyeti, na kshiyate. It does not decline, it does not decay, it does not change in any way. So when instead of saying it does not decline, I have to start saying I don't decline, I don't decay, I don't change. So the being ashabdadimat, ashabdadimatvat na kshiyate. What kshiyate? It is the physical body, it is the sukshma sharira, the capacity to do things, think, hear, analyze, all of them will go down sooner or later. I know I had a Purvashrama uncle, great scholar, great chess player. He'd analyzed our Carnatic music in great depth. He's an engineer by profession. So he broke down Carnatic music, all the Melakarta ragas, into the notes and the relationship between the frequencies of this note, Saregama Padani, etc. Extensive notes he'd written down. Such a person, toward the last few years, started losing his thinking. Brain cells started dying. Very difficult to see. Such an erudite person, he also loses it. Memory goes, thinking capacity goes, analytical capacity goes, all the five senses go. But Brahman, I, the Vastu that I'm trying to understand, being Ashabdadimat, not having any of those, is never subject to decay. Look at this. I have to use words like never. The moment I use word like never, in my mind or in your mind, it is restricting it in time scale. No, it's not subject to time. So whenever we use these words, we also need to be alert to what we're trying to convey. But never immediately tells me, not in the past, not in the present, not in the future, but what I want to understand is trikala atitaha, not subject to time. Idam tu ashabdadimatvat avyayam na vyeti na kshiyate, cannot decline. Declining is a phenomena of the Jagat. Anything that is part of the Jagat will decline. It might decline slowly, it might decline fast, but anything in the Jagat will decline. But what we are talking about is Paramarthika Satyam. This Jagat itself is Mithya. So that Satyam, that Vastu has no sense of declension. Idam tu ashabdadimatvat avyayam. Being avyayam, he says, Atayeva
Atayeva
cha nityam.
cha nityam.
Now he's also taken up the word nityam. That which is avyayam, that which never undergoes no change. I'm using the word never again. That which undergoes no change. Not in time, not in place, not in any way, is nityam. There again, when you say nityam, because at any point in time, it is the same, but even when you don't consider time, it is what it is. Brahman is isness. Doesn't change. Time will change. Place will change. T1, T2, P1, P2, whatever. But I, Brahman, Atma, is not subject to any of these. That is called Nityam. Atayeva cha Nityam. Why? Because Ashabdadimatvat Avyayam. No change takes place. Because anything that is Vyeti, anything that is subject to Kshaya, is Anityam. Why? What is subject to Kshaya, declines in time. Brahman is the very Satyam of time. Therefore, Brahman cannot undergo any change. What undergoes change? Yad divyeti,
Yat hi vyeti
tad anityam.
tad anityam.
What is nityam is defined. And he says anything that is, because it is avyayam, it is anityam. It is nityam. And anything with vyeti has to be anityam. That includes everything in the Jagat. Yadhi vyeti, tad anityam. It's anityam. Idam tu
Idam tu
na vyeti
na
vyeti
ato nityam.
ato nityam.
Therefore nityam. Because it is avyayam. They are related words. What is avyayam? Not subject to change, not subject to decline, is nityam. Idam to this, however, na vyeti. Ataha nityam. Therefore, these words is taken from there. Avyayam, nityam. Two words is taken and and expanded on. All these are related words. If we understand the words, Avyayam is related to Nityam, is related to Anadi, is related to Anantam. All of them are like that. Idam tu na vyeti ataha nityam. Itascha
Itascha
nityam.
Nityam.
Therefore, nityam. Why therefore? Because it is avyayam. That which is avyayam is nityam. Therefore, nityam. What is nityam? You further expand it. Look at it another way. Like I said, all these words are related. He also looks at this by taking another word from the same mantra. Itascha nityam
Itasya nityam.
anadi
Anadi.
avidyamanaha adihi
Avidyamana
Avidyamana
adihi.
adihi.
karanam asya
Karanam asya.
idam anadi.
Tadidam anadi.
Idam
What is
anadi.
anadi? That which is nityam, it cannot be nityam if there is a starting point. That which has a starting point cannot be nityam. Therefore, he says, itascha, therefore, it is nityam and it is anadi. Adihi avidyamanaha, for which there is no beginning. Adihi avidyamanaha. Another way of looking at it. Avidyamanaha adihi karanam yasya asya tad idam anadi. For which there is no karanam, no cause. It is uncaused nityam. If something causes this, anything which is called will have a starting point, will have a beginning date. And anything which has a beginning date will also have an expiry date. Our Sharira is a classic example. You go to any graveyard, born so and so date, died so and so date. Anything which starts has to end. Therefore it says, Anadi avidyamana adihi karanam yasya, for which no karanam is known. Karanam cannot be there. Adi cannot be there. Tad anadi. We saw yesterday, even when children, orphans are called anadi, because their karanam is missing. We know there must have been a karanam in that case, but we know it is not available. Here it is not like that. Here there is no karanam, there is no possibility of a karanam. An anadi orphan has a date of birth. Brahman is anadi in the sense that there is no karanam, therefore no adi. Anadi avidyamana adi karanam asya tad idam anadi. Why? Because yad yad adimat
Yad yad adimat.
tat karyatvat
Tatkaryatvat.
anityam
Nityam.
karane praliyate
Karane
Ane
praliyate.
praliyate.
yatha prithivyadi
Yatha prithvyadi.
Prithvyadi.
yad yad adimat. That which has a beginning has to be a karyam. Something must have been there which has triggered this beginning. Yadyat adimat tat karyatvat, being karyam, because it has a karanam, what happens? It is anityam. It is a starting date, must have an end date, an expiry date. Manufactured so and so day, expiry so and so day. Sometimes they'll write expiry, 6 months or whatever. We also come with that label, no? Sharira born so-and-so date, 1979. End date is written, we don't know the end date. When Yamadharmaraja, who is teaching Nachiketa, decides your time is up, you cannot ask for extension. There is no extension there. The end date is already there. The day Adi is there, Anta is also there. Yad yad Adimat tat karyatvad, being karyam, is anityam. How is anityam? We have been seeing in the previous mantras that everything resolves into its karanam. Any karyam will resolve into its karanam. One is cognitively it will resolve. I can see that when I see gold ornaments in the gold shop, if I am looking at it from the perspective of gold, it will all resolve into gold. How many grams of gold do I have? By itself, that gold ornament might be something fantastic, beautiful workmanship, for which, of course, that fellow will add 2% wastage or 5% wastage. But what you see is gold. The other is eventually it will go back into being gold. Physically. A mud pot will become mud sooner or later. Karane praliyate yatha prithivyadi. Everything will resolve into its karanam sooner or later. Oh, Prithvi is permanent. No, it's not permanent. It is also subject to time. It is when the kalpa changes, when Mahapralaya happens, that also resolves into the Abhyakta. Our way of looking at this is very different from the Western way of looking at it. Our philosophically also, the smallest time frame called Paramanu, it is roughly, I think, less than a millisecond. Smallest time frame. Then you have all bigger, going to Yuga, and you go to Mahayuga, and go to Kalpa and Manvantara. Every time you have a Manvantara, there's a name for the Manvantara also. Kali Yuge, Pratame Pade, everything is defined. People who read the Panchankam look at all this very carefully. Today, we are in so and so time frame. First part of the time frame, second part of the time frame. So, everything will resolve into its karanam. But this Brahman, remember we said everything starts with the Panchabhutas. Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apa, Prithvi. All of them are the karanam for everything else in the Jagat. And what is the karanam for those? Brahman. That which does not have a karanam for itself. It is there, period. Is. Idam tu.
Idam
Idam
tu
tu
Sarva karanatvat.
sarva karanatvat
Karyam.
karyam
karyam
It does not have a karanam, therefore it is not a karya. Only when something is there is a karanam for this, can it be called a karya, a product, an effect, which will eventually resolve into the karanam. But that we try to understand as I, does not have a Karanam. Sarva Karanatvat, because it is the Karanam for everything else and doesn't have a Karanam of its own. Sarva Karanatvat akaryam. It is not a karyam. Very nicely analyzed. It is neither karyam nor karanam. As long as we're looking at everything from within the Jagat, we see only karya karana prakriya. When the understanding takes place, when our perspective changes, when we understand Brahman, I is neither karyam nor karanam, there is no such thing as karya karanam. Karya karanam belongs to Mithya Jagat. Therefore, idam tu sarva karanatvat akaryam. Akaryatvat
Akaryatvat
nityam.
Nityam
Akaryatvan nityam. Because it is not a karyam, it is not produced, it is not in effect, it is there. That's it. Is. That Brahman, I is. Now we understand why I keep saying I is, not I am. I am always refers to the Sharira. Generally, when we speak in our normal language communication, I am refers to the Sharira and what is in the Sharira. But the easiness of the Sharira itself is the I that I am trying to understand. Akaryatvad anityam. Oh, sorry, akaryatvad nityam. Not anityam. There's no karyam, therefore it's nityam. No beginning, no karanam. It is not a karyam of anything, therefore nityam. Not only that, na tasya karanam asti
न तस्य कारणमस्ति
yasmin praliyate.
यस्मिन् प्रलीयते
Riyate.
Not have a karanam. It is sarva karanam. Rephrase that. I am, or rather, I is sarva karanam. There is no karanam for I when understood paramarthika drishtya. When looked at from the vyavaharika drishti, I have a karanam in my janani. But paramarthika drishtya, there is no karanam. Na tasya karanam asti. Therefore, nothing will resolve back into. Na tasya karanam asti yasmin praliyate, where it can resolve. Therefore, I cannot resolve into anything. I am nityam. I is nityam. And because it is nityam, avyayam, akaryam, akaranamapi, it is anantam. Anything which produces the next generation product, whether it's a seed or something else, can disappear, can change and disappear. Bhashyakara gives us some examples of that also. But this I is anadi and anantam. Tatha anantam
तथा अनन्तं
अनन्तं
vidyamanaha antaha
Vidyamanaha
अविद्यमानः
antaha.
अन्तः
karyamasya tad anantam.
कार्यमस्य
Karyamasya
तदनन्तम्.
तं
Because it is anadi, because it is avyayam, because it is nityam, does not have any ending. Avidyamanaha antaha karyam asya tat anantam. It doesn't produce anything. We've been talking about this all the time. Brahman, I don't produce anything. No whole Jagat you created, no. Only you understand from the perspective of Jagat, yes, there is a Jagat Karanam Brahma. But when the understanding matures to see that there is no karanam. It's mithya. Therefore it says, yasya avidyamanaha antah karyam. Doesn't produce any karyam. It's anantam. I'll give you an example. Yatha
यथा
kadalvadehe
कदल्यादेः
kadali adehe kadalvadehe.
कदल्यादेः
Aladi karya utpadanena
फलादिकार्य
उत्पादनेन
nityatvam
अपि
नित्यत्वम्
anityatvam apyanityatvam
अप्यनुत्तत्वं
अनित्यत्वम्
दृष्टं
nacha tathapi
न च तथापि
अपि
anantavatvam
अनन्तवत्वं
अनन्तवत्वम्
brahmanaha.
ब्रह्मणः
Example he gives, you know how the plantain banana tree, once it is given one, what was it called, a fruit, banana fruit. In Tamil they say sheep, a whole lot of bananas. Once it produces the bananas, yatha kadali adehe, the tree, the banana tree, phaladi karya utpadanena, having produced the one crop of phala, anityatvam drishtam, declines. That's it. There's no more of the tree available. Fresh new stem has to come. There are other things also in the world as an example, which by producing, they themselves disappear because they create a karyam. There are many examples where it doesn't happen. But here what he's trying to argue is, unlike a banana tree, which disappears once it's produced banana fruits, this Brahman, I, does not ever produce any karyam, so you cannot point at an example and say something that produces a karyam will disappear. No, this doesn't produce anything at all. No question of any change. It's avyayam. And therefore anityam. But different ways he's presenting the word anityam. Nityam, anantam. That which has no end. Tatha yatha kadalvadehe phaladi karye utpadanena api anityatvam drishtam. You can see the anityatvam. But Brahman doesn't belong to that. Nacha tathapi antavatvam brahmanaha. For the Brahman, for I, there is no end date. That is called antavatvam. Therefore, also, even from this perspective, ataha api
अतः अपि
nityam.
नित्यम्
Therefore, these words, all interrelated words, nityam, avyayam, anadi, anantam, all are related. And what Bhashyakara is trying to do is to bring them together and say that, therefore, Brahman, being avyaya, what is avyaya? Navyeti. It is nityam, no beginning, no end. Otherwise, everything in the Jagat has a beginning and an end. Some things will begin and die like a moth. You know what the moth is? In rainy season, many times you see the whole floor when you get up in the morning to go out in your veranda, it's carpeted with dead moth. That's what the lifespan is. Is born, flies to the light, dies, end of story. Very short lifetime. On the other hand, you have a tortoise. 400, 500, 800 years. Slowly keep moving. I have a friend who in England who has a tortoise pet in his garden. Fun to watch. You can sit there and just keep watching the tortoise moving around. It takes a long time to disappear, but it's still anityam. You have mountains which look imperishable till our friends start taking out things from the mountain. You know, in Coimbatore is very famous for certain types of products. You know what kind of products? In Tamil it's called article, where you grind your paste, no? And ammi, where you grind by this kind of motion. And they're all made from granite from the mountains. And you can see in Coimbatore, mountains which have been attacked heavily by these industries. Now you can see the shape of the mountain itself has changed over time. So quarrying starts. And we as human beings have the great penchant for more and more and more. So I think later on the government put some restrictions on it also, I don't remember. But we can even mountains which look like really there for a long time. Even that we attack. Forests. So anything which has a beginning must have an end. You know what is the one thing that does not have a beginning but has an end? Avidya. We can't find the beginning of avidya. If I take this janma, it is there from the time I'm born. If I take many janmas, it's always there. I can't find where did it start? Where did avidya start? Avidya is Maya. And Maya is itself done that which fools us. Therefore, avidya is always there. But that is one thing that can end. Without a beginning, it can end. But because nothing is nityam. Only one vastu to which we can attach a word nityam is Brahman. No, not only Brahman. I am nityam. Not this body, mind, sense complex. I, when understood correctly, as Chaitanya Swarupam, is Anadi, Anantam, Avyayam, Nityam. Thanks to our Bhashyakara, we can understand why these words are used in the mantra for describing I, Atma, Brahman, and how at some point of time, even my limited mind gets enough Sukshma Shakti to grasp this. And having grasped, also goes. Even Jnanam, as opposed to Ajnanam, which is part of the Jagat, having given us this ability to remove the Ajnanam, both Ajnanam and Jnanam as we know it in the Jagat go. What is left is only that which is the Atma for Jnanam and Ajnanam. Jna dhatu artha. That which is the root for both Jnanam and Ajnanam that we know. Something to think about. We'll give ourselves some time to think about this fact that as Jnanam removes Ajnanam, it removes itself also. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.